Hey, it's me, Nalthazar, and welcome to another Magic the Gathering Puzzle Quest video. In today's video, I'm going to be going over a brand new Planeswalker that has entered the vault, Nissa of Shadowed Boughs. So let's get into it. Now, really quickly from the beginning, I want to give a quick shout out, thank you to Octagon. They hooked me up with this Planeswalker so I could go ahead and make this video for you guys. Nissa of Shadowed Boughs is the first green-black Nissa, and she gives us our first really good reanimator Planeswalker in Puzzle Quest. So she's got her three abilities: Shadowed Bow, Bitter Connection, and Reclaimed Zendikar. The first ability, at level 60, Shadowed Bow, you're going to create a Shadowed Bow token. Then you're going to convert 2 gems to green and 2 gems to black. The token that you're going to create is a land with 3 shields that has landfall green, so when you match 4 or more green gems, gain 3 loyalty, then your land supports gain 1 shield, and then landfall black, your opponent loses 3 life. And each of these effects can trigger up to 2 times per turn. The second ability, Bitter Connection, is going to create a Hissing Quagmire token. Then, if you control 2 or less creatures, create 6 swamp tokens. Otherwise, draw 2 cards. So the Hissing Quagmire is a land that's going to convert 2 gems to green and 2 gems to black each turn. And it's going to have an activated gem that will pop in 2 turns. Or when you match it, that has your first creature gets +2/+2, Death Touch, and Menace until the beginning of your next turn. The swamp tokens are just 1/1 elemental land swamp tokens with haste, but the drawing 2 cards is actually very useful for that ability. And finally, her third ability is Reclaimed Zendikar. Reclaimed Zendikar is going to create a Reclaimed Zendikar token. Then each creature card in your hand is going to gain mana equal to the number of black gems on the board, and each land in your hand is going to gain mana equal to the number of green gems on the board. Now, the Reclaimed Zendikar token is what makes Nissa of Shadowed Boughs Nissa of Shadowed Boughs. So this token is an emblem land. It's got 4 shields when it comes into play. And when you cast a creature, return the first creature card from your graveyard to your hand. That creature gets +X/+X, gains Berserker, and gains X mana. X is the number of black gems. And it also has, when a creature you control dies, the first creature in your hand gets +Y/+Y, gains reach, and gains Y mana. Y is the number of green gems. Now, this ability is an incredibly powerful ability. It is ridiculously strong. For that matter, it goes infinite with Otrimi. So if you have this ability on the battlefield and there are a number of black gems on the battlefield that is equal to or greater than the mana cost of the creatures in your deck, then you're just going to be able to get infinite creatures by playing Otrimi. Now, even if you aren't playing Otrimi, this is a ridiculously powerful ability. We've got so many things that are going to put things into our graveyard, and so you just wind up getting all of your creatures back. Now, at the moment, right at the time that I'm making this video, there is an issue with this ability. I do not think that the creature gaining +X/+X, where X is the number of black gems, I don't think it's actually gaining the +X/+X when it's entering the battlefield. We'll have to check on the gameplay again, but I'm pretty sure that it's not doing it consistently. At the very least, I noticed that there were times where I felt like it wasn't actually giving the boost to my creatures. And I have played fairly extensively with this walker since she came out. That being said, even with that, it's absolutely bananas how good this third ability is. The second ability I found was actually surprisingly useful, in part because you're getting a token that creates lands, but also because it has that draw 2 cards. And with the first ability, Shadowed Bow, right, making it so that you can gain up to 6 loyalty a turn for the landfall greens, if you're making a deck that is hinged around making green swaps, so you're playing, say, like green land forming, and you're playing other green gem converters and stuff, you're going to pretty easily get that trigger twice per turn to gain 6 loyalty, and that's half of what you need for Bitter Connection. So I found that for actually achieving objectives, she was phenomenal. She was very, very good. So let's go ahead. Let's get to see some gameplay with Nissa of the Shadowed Boughs. The 2 decks that I'm going to be using in this video, one is a Mythic and Masterpiece deck. It's using Otrimi, Draina, and then Boneyard Mycodrax as the critter that Draina can bring back. I'm running all black gem conversion here because I want to be able to bring as much back with my third ability as possible. And so for black gem conversion, I've got Witch's Cottage, I've got Castle Locthwain, and then I've got the 2 land-forming black cards with Hagra Mauling and Agadeem's Awakening. Now, the other deck that I'm running is a Mythic and Masterpiece free deck. It is going to be this one right here. You're going to see I'm once again going with the black gem conversion through Hagra Mauling, Castle Locthwain, and Witch's Cottage, but instead of running the Agadeem's Awakening, I'm running Zoff Consumption to get the token over there. Now, you'll also see that I'm running a lot of graveyard cards, so I'm running things like Gather the Pack, I'm running things like Cauldron's Gift, I'm running things like Sir Conrad and Garuda to dump stuff into my graveyard. This Nissa very much needs things dumped in the graveyard in order for her to achieve her greatest potential. I should also add that the low-key champion of this deck is actually Skull Prophet, because whenever you convert 2 or more gems to black, you destroy the top 3 cards of your library. And this deck has 4 different cards that are going to convert that many gems to black, which means that we're going to be milling 12 cards a turn with Skull Prophet when we get everything out, which is very, very solid, by the way. Super, super, super solid. Very good. So now let's go ahead, get into the gameplay. I'm going to be showing the Mythic gameplay first, and then the non-Mythic gameplay second. So in this first match, I'm paired up against Karn, and my goal here was to see if Otrimi really could actually totally break Nissa. And this was actually the second match that I played with Nissa. Now you'll see that I'm prioritizing gem conversion. It's very important that you prioritize gem conversion, especially right now with all of the different cards that we have at our disposal that are converting gems. And so I'm going to be matching the black gems. I'm trying to get the Witch's Cottage down. I'm trying to get the Hagra Mauling loaded with mana so that if Karn actually plays a creature, I can make any sideways swap to destroy the creature and also get a land out of it. You'll see that I'm also running Nylea here. This is just so that I can get the creatures that I want and then also give them some mana. So getting an Agadeem's Awakening here is nice. It's a little bit early to get it, but it's definitely always nice to have. So even though my goal is to get as many black gems on the field as possible, you're going to see that I am making a lot of black gem matches. I am running black gem conversion, so I'm not ultimately that worried about matching those gems. So here I'm going to go ahead. That's perfect that Karn actually played his third. This lets me play the Hagra Mauling. I just need to make sure that I make a horizontal match here so that I can take that thing down. Now, having a bunch of Otrimis is kind of a bummer, honestly, because I don't want them just yet. I do ultimately want them, but just not yet. So I'm going to make the horizontal match. That means that I get to kill Karn, but I also get to make a land support that's going to convert 3 gems to black. So I've now got 2 different converters, which is nice. It means that I will be able to keep my mana flow fairly consistent. And on top of the fairly consistent mana flow, it also means that I'm going to be able to get to my third ability a little bit more quickly. And so remember, my goal is to get to that ability. So here I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to mutate Otrimi onto the Mycodrax, and that's going to throw 3 creatures into my graveyard. Remember, we want to have creatures in our graveyard for this deck. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to start moving my creatures up, and I'm going to try and get Draina down now. So getting Draina down means that I can be stealing even more creatures from my graveyard every turn, which is fantastic. I've now got my third ability available, and that's going to be extra nice because the third ability also goes and charges all the creatures in your hand with mana. And since I've got so many creatures in my hand right now, it's just going to go ahead and you're going to see it start charging them with mana, which is nice. It means that I can definitely get the Draina down. I can actually go ahead and bring Otrimi down. And in bringing the Otrimis and the Drainas and all of that, I can get close to doing what it is I want to do with this turn. Now, ultimately, I do want to try and get Agadeem's Awakening down. I do want to have one more gem converter down for just black, so that ideally on my next turn, I can try and make the dream work with some of the absolutely ridiculous shenanigans that is Otrimi plus Nissa. And so here it's looking like as long as we get a relatively decent conversion on our next turn, we will be set. So our gems are converting. Unfortunately, one got matched to black, but that's okay. There are so many black gems on the battlefield right now that I'm pretty sure we're good. Now you'll see that Otrimi, for example, here in my hand, right? That first Otrimi that I'm going to play should have 16 power, right? So that means that when I play it, the Otrimi that's on the battlefield should go to 28 power. So let's try and keep track of some of those buffs to see if what I was saying at the beginning is true. Okay, so this Otrimi does get to 28, and then we get to 34. That's fine. The drain is pumping up to 30. And now here's where we're now infinite, right? If you're wondering, wait a minute, Nalthazar, what do you mean this is where we're now infinite? So the number of black gems that is on the battlefield exceeds the number, yep, that one right there. That Otrimi and that Draina did not get the power boost. So once they've gotten a power boost once, they're not continuing to get the power boost. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought, right? So, right, that Otrimi right there should have added 23 power, but it added 6. That Mycodrax should have added 20 before doing the buff. It did not add 20, it added 3. Okay, so that just confirms what I was saying a little bit earlier about the power not being added properly with Nissa. It only adds it once, even though it should be adding it for each creature that comes onto the battlefield. Now, if you're wondering what's happening here, Otrimi, when mutated, makes it so that whenever you cast a creature that is mutated by Otrimi, you're going to take the next 3 creatures from your deck and put them in your graveyard. And then with this, right, whenever you cast a creature, you're going to take a creature from your graveyard and you're going to put it in your hand. And because there are more black gems on the battlefield than any of our creatures have as a mana cost, that means that we're just going to be able to play them for free. So you play a creature, it dumps 3 creatures in your graveyard, and then you get a creature back to your hand. You play a creature, it dumps 3 in your graveyard, you get a creature back to your hand. And so this is what creates this infinite loop right here that you are witnessing now between all of this nonsense. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and make it go like fully infinite and just keep hitting no on the loop prevention system. I will say no on the next one just so that we don't have to sit through all of it. I just wanted to prove a point. But this is just by having Otrimi and Nissa. So if you have Otrimi, then you're definitely going to want to get this Planeswalker. This is absolutely busted, like completely busted. Even though the Planeswalker is not entirely working as I think it's supposed to, it's still ridiculous. Like what nothing can survive this. You just win. So this is match number 1. I'm going to stop the loop. We're going to kill Karn, and we're going to move to the second match. So for our second match, we're getting paired up against Ashiok, which is without a doubt a major bummer because Ashiok is going to be exiling things from our graveyard probably. That a lot of Ashiok decks tend to run that. But even with that, that's honestly going to be okay. I've got 3 different gem converters in my starting hand between Locthwain and the Witch's Cottage and the Hagra Mauling. So that's pretty sweet. We've got Sir Conrad and we've got the Skull Prophet. So we're going to be able to mill a ton of cards from our deck. And seeing Urza here is actually really nice. You might be like, wait, what? Why? What? You wanted to see Urza? But yeah, I really did actually, because this shows that I'm actually up against a decent deck, right? I'm not just feasting on some Scrub Lord that's not playing with good cards. This is actually up against good cards. Now, you might be wondering like, all right, well, okay, so we just saw that Otrimi match. Why are you showing this deck after the Otrimi match? Why didn't you just show this match first and the Otrimi match second? And as you're going to find out in just a little bit, even without mythics, this is ridiculously powerful. Like what this deck can accomplish, what this Planeswalker can accomplish without mythics is definitely extraordinary. It's savage. So we get to see another Urza. That's for many reasons not what we want to see, right? Because A, Urza is a savage, nasty, evil monster. And B, and more importantly, Urza is going to be converting a whole bunch of gems to blue, which means it's going to be much harder for us to stack the board with a ton of black gems, which is definitely what we want. We're throwing a whole bunch of things into the graveyard, and by throwing a whole bunch of things into the graveyard, we want to have a whole bunch of black gems so that we can bring it all back. Now, you will see that my graveyard is starting to get pretty large, right? It's at 31 right now, but every turn it's just getting more and more and more. You might be like, come on, Nalthazar, aren't you going to use Nissa's other abilities? And the answer is yes. I have been using her other abilities a lot with a land forming green deck. I've had a lot of fun with. But the best way to run Nissa, like the most powerful way to run Nissa, is without a doubt going to be milling cards, destroying creatures from your deck, and then reanimating them with her third ability. Her third ability is just so doggone strong, guys. It's unfairly strong. So here I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to use that ability. It's going to charge up my creatures in my hand with mana. I actually don't even need that Gather the Pack. At this stage, what I need to do is just not make a black match. Or at least, I want to have like a whole bunch of black gems on the battlefield. So if I match a few of them here, that's going to be okay. So you're seeing that I'm actually tapping on that huge L shape of black gems on the bottom to figure out which ones belong to Conrad. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to let Conrad do his thing over there. I'm going to let him mill the Ashiok a few times. Unfortunately, that does trigger a whole bunch more of the black gems, but that's okay. We're going to throw some things in the graveyard with Gather the Pack, and then we're getting 13 mana to our critters this turn. Now, I could have just not done this, right? I could have just waited and not match the black gems, but I figured I wanted to try and dump as much in my graveyard as possible before making this happen. And yeah, you're going to see here that this turn I'm absolutely going to avoid making the black match. I'm just going to go ahead and take whatever match the game wants to give me. And you're going to see that this is just about infinite with Garuda, right? So Garuda, just as Otrimi made us go infinite, Garuda almost makes us go infinite. Like, look at this. So we're going to get the Skull Prophet down. Skull Prophet is getting us a critter, right? So we're bringing stuff back from the graveyard. Garuda's going to throw 8 more critters in the graveyard, or 8 more cards, right? Sir Conrad is going to be pinging Ashiok, and now every single time we play a creature, we're going to be bringing a creature back. Now the Garuda's alone, right? So for the 4 copies of Garuda that we have in our deck, out of our 40 cards, right? Those Garudas are going to be milling a grand total of 32 cards, which means that the Garudas alone are going to account for 36 out of 40 cards in our deck, meaning that the Garudas are going to come into play. They're going to destroy, between the Garudas coming back from the graveyard and then destroying, they're basically getting rid of 36 cards out of 40 for our deck. So that's what makes this finite, right? Instead of infinite, because we're not milling 40 with the Garudas. We're not converting more gems to black, which would make the Skull Prophet do this. But nonetheless, this is about far enough. We don't need to we're going to definitely hit yes to stop the loop, and we're going to kill Ashiok here. There's no reason to make this keep going. You've already sat through 1 loop timer. I'm not going to make you sit through 2, but you can see what I mean by this third ability is bonkers, right? Just completely ridiculous. So let's talk about this Planeswalker a little bit. For my final thoughts on Nissa of Shadowed Boughs, she's definitely sort of an odd walker, right? And I say that because her third ability and her first 2 abilities don't really go together super well if you are playing her in her strongest form, right? Shadowed Bow and Bitter Connection look like they would be excellent abilities to pair with Reclaim Zendikar because they're going to convert the board to both green and black. But the thing about it is that you really want to, as soon as you get Reclaim Zendikar, right, as soon as you get that 18 loyalty, you want to go ahead and use that ability. It's just so incredibly strong. Like it's almost game-breakingly strong, that third ability. And then you use that ability, you use up your 18 loyalty, and the game probably ends in a turn or 2. It's not like you're going to have time to then save up 6 more loyalty to get Shadowed Bow or Bitter Connection. Now, if you're playing Nissa of Shadowed Boughs in an event, instead of playing her in something like Training Grounds, where you're just going to try and smash your opponent's face as thoroughly as possible, that's where the Shadowed Bow and Bitter Connection become significantly better abilities. I find myself using those 2 more than I find myself using Reclaim Zendikar when I'm using her in an event. So I used her as much as I could in the most recent Zendikar Expeditions event that ran, and she was absolutely phenomenal. I made a green landforming deck around her, and it just completely smashed that landforming node. It was ridiculous, especially with the new mythic critter that makes it so that all of your lands have resilient, and made it so that the Shadowed Bow token was resilient because it's a land. It made it so that the Hissing Quagmire token was resilient because it's a land. And then with all of the green gem conversion from all of the green land forming, it made it so that I was gaining loyalty pretty darn quickly. And it made it so that as I needed to achieve my objectives, I could just spam use Bitter Connection to just draw and draw and draw. So I really like Nissa of Shadowed Boughs. There's a lot of different things that you can do with her, and in spite all those things that you can do with her, she just doesn't feel flexible enough to be an S tier planeswalker. So Garruk, Cursed Huntsman is a same color pairing, right? Garruk Cursed Huntsman is green and black. Garruk Cursed Huntsman is without a doubt an S tier planeswalker. It's a planeswalker that everyone needs to have. It's one of the first 2 planeswalkers that I think anyone that is just getting into Magic Puzzle Quest should put in their collection. But that being said, Nissa of Shadowed Boughs, I feel like you kind of need cards to make her good, whereas the other planeswalkers that I have in my S tier, you don't exactly really need cards to make them good, right? So things like Garruk, things like Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, things like the tricolored walkers like Narset or the Bolosses or even Karn. Like, you really don't need too many cards in your collection to make those good, with the exception of Narset. Whereas Nissa absolutely needs cards to be good. That being said, her third ability is just so incredibly strong. If you have stuff that throws things in your graveyard, like, I mean, most people are probably going to have Gather the Pack. Even if you just have that, it is worth picking up this planeswalker and testing her out and seeing what you think of her. She is, without a doubt, hands down, the best reanimation planeswalker that we've seen in Puzzle Quest. And she definitely benefits from having black in her coloring, apart from just being green, because with the removal of all of green's removal, right, with the new standard, with all of green's removal going bye-bye, green needs that black pairing. And these 2 colors come together perfectly to make Nissa of Shadowed Boughs a fantastic planeswalker. I'm going to go ahead and say that I think that she's an A planeswalker. She could dip as low as B, but I really think she's an A tier planeswalker. Just from my initial testing. That Reclaim Zendikar, like, the more that I play with it, the more I'm like, what is this? Like, you just get so much power. And if they fix Reclaim Zendikar, if they make it so that every single time you get the critter back, maybe that jumps Nissa a little bit. Currently, without each of your critters being able to stack that buff, I think that takes away from her a little bit. But nonetheless, she is, oh gosh, she's crazy, guys. So do I think she's worth it? Yes, I absolutely do. Do I think that she's a planeswalker that no matter what, you absolutely have to make sure that you get? If you have Garruk, not exactly. So I like her a lot. If you've got the cards to make her, go ahead and get her. Go ahead and play with her. She's awesome. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.